Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to start now. Thank you. Welcome to the Inclusion Collaborative State Conference 2016. And this is the sessions Building and Sustaining Inclusion Preschool Programs from 11:15 to 12:15 on October 25th, 2017. I would like to present to you a panel starting with Ms. Kristin Brooks. She is the director to Santa Clara County Office of Education. Ms. Brooks has been dedicated to the Education and Inclusion Collaborative, our students with and without disability, for the past 19 years. She has served as both a speech-language pathologist and administrator in the preschool, high school settings, and now directs statewide grant work through California. Presenter number 2, Ms. Christina Daffron. She is the Early Childhood Special Ed teacher at Etiwanda School District. Ms. Christina Daffron has worked in the field of early childhood and early childhood special ed since 1995. She is currently an early childhood special educator in an inclusive preschool classroom in Etiwanda School District. The third presenter today is Samantha Pellitteri. She is the lead school psychologist at Etiwanda School District. Dr. Pellitteri is the lead school psychologist for Etiwanda School District and adjunct faculty in the school psychology department at the University of Laverne. She is also the co-creator of the Clowns Preschool Program, an inclusive preschool program. Presenter number 4, please welcome Ms. Marla Silversmith. She's the Director of Special Education at Pleasanton Unified School District. She, growing up with an older sister who has Down syndrome, Marla has spent her life advocating for people with disabilities and special needs. Marla has taught high school resource support programs, special day class autism, and high school independent living skills programs. Last but not least, the 5th presenter today will be Sasha Begell. She's the Director of Special Education at Vacaville Unified School District. Sasha Begell is the Director of Special Education in Vacaville Unified School District. She has been active in the area of special ed for over 14 years and has been a champion of increasing the expectations held for students and students with disabilities and increasing options for inclusions in the general education environment for students with disabilities. Please give them a welcome applause.
Thank you for that introduction. And welcome again, everybody. Glad you guys are here and glad you joined the best session that's happening virtually right now, but don't tell everybody else. So welcome to our virtual audience as well. Thank you for joining us. As you mentioned, I'm Kristin Brooks, and I think you guys were just in the welcome session, so you already heard my background there. But this is really about our panel, our amazing panel today. And when they came in, I said, oh my gosh, the A-team, the dream team, this really is them. They are fantastic. So I'm very excited for you to hear their stories, be able to ask some questions of them, and what their journeys look like and what that journey still looks like in building, sustaining, and scaling up inclusive preschool programs. So let's see. It's good if you turn this on, I hear, or it's not going to work. All right, moving forward. So we did our welcome already. Again, thank you so much for being here. So our outcomes for today are listed here. We're going to be talking about the journeys of the districts from our district representatives and engaging in the Q&A around building, implementing, improving, and sustaining. Remember, we talked earlier about that continuous improvement loop. And consider how what you have learned can be applied in your own school community. So a great opportunity again for you guys to ask questions of the folks up here and just really kind of having a brainstorming session too as you're processing everything and hearing about others' journeys and what that might look like in your own school community. So all of the information that we have related to the preschool and some of the things that the presenters are going to be talking about today is posted on the Padlet, and so I'll show you that link at the end, but it is part of the app, so you should have that already downloaded when you registered for this session. This is a very brief PowerPoint, but the Padlet contains all of the really good nitty-gritty resources. So again, we'll show you that at the end. All right. So first up, we have Dr. Samantha Pellitteri and Christina Daffron, and I just want to do a quick introduction because we did a lot of grassroots work together, an amazing team in Etiwanda, which is in Southern California, and I'm going to let them share the story, but I just have to say that when you talk about kind of doing inclusion and doing it right and doing it well, what a model site. And of course the same for all of our sites, but I have the most communication and contact with them. Christina was actually my own son's teacher. So when I was pregnant and Sam and I were creating the program, I said, whatever comes out, general ed, special ed, is going to this preschool that we are creating. And so that wasn't that the vision? I think we wrote that down. It was our vision. And so our kids went through the program together, and I could not be happier with my son's teacher. So very excited for you to hear their story because it is very personal to me, near and dear. They are amazing. So I am going to pass it on. Kind of the format of the panel of what we're going to do is they're going to do about 7-10 minute-ish presentation on their districts, on their programs, give you some background information. You guys have a chance to ask some questions specifically of those districts and individually at the end. So they're all going to kind of report out, and then we'll open it up to questions. Sound okay? All right, so this is, again, going to be the most fun because it's most interactive. All right, so moving on, I'll turn it over to Dr. Samantha Pellitteri.
Hi. Well, our journey, and I say our journey because Kristin and I
She's mic'd. Oh, you are? Oh,
I am, okay. Created a program together. So our journey started, probably 15-ish years ago. And at the time, we were the preschool assessment team. So myself as a school psychologist, at the time, Kristin as a speech and language pathologist, we were assessing our kids, transitioning over to school-based services at 3, going into the homes, doing our assessments, and then, of course, holding our IEP meetings regarding placement. At the time, we would do our assessment, our IEPs, and the options that we had at that time were to refer our kids to county programs. We didn't have anything within the district. And because we were sort of that first line of defense for families as they were coming into the district and building that relationship, one of the things that we heard often was, we moved into this district for its schools, and now you are shipping us off. And then we will come back in a couple of years. And we heard that over and over and over again. And, a lot of our focus was building those relationships, introducing education to kids at that age, and we wanted that to be a positive experience. So we wanted our kids with us. And so at some point, I said, we can do this. We don't know how, because it wasn't an area of expertise for either of us. I think we had the passion. My sister works for San Francisco Unified, and for many, many years was an inclusion specialist. So something that I heard about a lot. I heard the passion, I heard how it worked, and so it was something that I wanted to bring to our area. It seemed to be much more progressive kind of up here, and we needed to kind of bring it down to Southern California. We really didn't know where we were going. This is something we stumbled into and we learned along the way. We had many sessions sitting on my living room floor, talking it out, figuring out how do we do this? What are the next steps? And over the course of time, we developed a program proposal and had done, our research about what we know about learning, in language and socialization, and that kids learn in a natural environment from peers and from other kids and how they learn. So we talked about, what would be strategic in bringing this to our district, because it was something completely new. So we also had to talk money, because that's often the way in and the way in for buy-in. So we did, a cost analysis for what we were spending, sending our kids to county programs, and it's expensive. And we figured, by that cost savings, we can do that here, and at a lower cost, and in a way that we had oversight, and that we knew what our kids were getting, and that we knew we could implement best practices for. So we presented to our cabinet, and at the time, what was nice is that we had a cabinet, our set of superintendents, who said, "Run with it, and go ahead, show us how it'll work." And so we started off small, which I think is probably something that we say a lot. We have obviously lofty ideas and goals, but it's okay to start small. And we did. We started with one classroom, and so with a few kids, and strategically, we started off truly with, I think, disabilities that everyone could wrap their minds around for inclusion. Now, knowing that we had different ideas, but we knew what might get our foot in the door. So we started with kids with, on the milder end of need, with speech and language impairment. And once we had that established, we certainly moved on from there. So we started off with one classroom, and our program is a 50-50 ratio. So we have half kids with IEPs, half without, and approximately 14-ish students per classroom, with a special education teacher, a general education teacher, and 2 instructional aides roughly for each classroom. So we do have a co-teaching type of model. We have an AM and a PM session, and one of the teachers, like the special education teacher, may be the primary teacher for the AM, the other teacher for the PM, and they're in each other's classrooms for a significant part of the day. And Christina certainly can talk about the nuts and bolts of that. So now at this point, and again, it's been, 12 years since we've been in action, and how many classrooms do we have? 16 or 17? Yeah, with 2 sessions per classroom. So I would say we're in the 350 kid student range, starting from 8? Mm-hmm. We started off with 8, and grew over time to now we have all of our kids. We have our kids with the most significant disabilities, kids that are medically complex, multiple disabilities, kids that have nurses, and so we're proud that we have all of our kids now. And it is currently a fully inclusive program, even with our kids that have the most significant needs. Everybody's in together. I was happy to see the title of our presentation, which was Building and Sustaining Programs, because we're past the building phase and we're in the sustaining phase. And I was thinking, I'm almost feeling like the sustaining is almost more challenging than the building. We're in a place where I'm feeling like we kind of have to rein things back to our mission, to our values, to our goals. As we grew and we spread out, it's easy to lose sort of the philosophy and the reason why we did this in the first place. So I'm kind of finding that we have to kind of bring it back and reestablish why we did this in the beginning. And there are roadblocks. It has not always been a smooth or easy road, but it has been a worthwhile road. It's challenging, but it's important because it's what's right and it's what's best for kids. So I can answer specific questions later, but this is, she's the nuts and the bolts. That's we can have ideas and we can create a structure and a philosophy, but the day in and the day out is where your success will be, whether it works or whether it doesn't work, and this one does it. So.
Good. So, thank you. But making it work, I'm not, maybe the parents see my face when I open the classroom door, but there's 12 faces behind me supporting me. I'm definitely not by myself. And that's one of the, I think, beauty of our program is that it's truly collaborative. So at our site, we have a full-time speech and language pathologist, and she sits about this close to me, our desks. And so there are some meaningful conversations that can happen about our kiddos, about who's struggling, who's having successes. My partner teacher is about 5 feet away from me if we're not in the classroom, if we're at our desks. And so just that close proximity of having a team around me makes me a better teacher, hopefully. And I think that sustaining idea is definitely where we are. So, and it's kind of an evolution. So hopefully I'm not the same teacher I was last year, because the OT is giving me ideas for my whole class, not just my students with IEPs or being mentored by other teachers who have been in the field for many years. But that brings about challenges too, because I think we grew so fast. We never have elbow room or space. So we are not all at the same site any longer. And so we currently are at 3 separate sites. So there's about 3 to 4 classrooms at each site. So maintaining that integrity of our program, ensuring that we are delivering high quality education is difficult when we don't see each other. You know, we co-plan at our site, we co-Starbucks, we co-Disneyland, we co a lot of things at our site, but when our other co-teachers and our other team are at different places, that's definitely a challenge to find that time, to find that availability, to collaborate, to problem solve. And this is a challenge we actually just talked about yesterday, and we are right in the middle of problem solving this. So if you have any great ideas or how we can do that. Other benefits that I get to see daily is, I'm glad one of the slides at the welcome talked about not just the benefits for our kids with IEPs, but the benefits for our gen ed students too. It goes both ways. And so I get to see the beauty of that daily. And the benefit for our families. Sometimes it just might be a parent gets to drop off a kid for 3 hours and not have to worry about them. And if that's what their day's like that day, that's fine. I'm happy to provide that. It's also networking for our families, seeing families who might have similar stories, and that play dates at Chick-fil-A after school or birthday parties. I love when our families get together outside of school. Raising kids is hard, no matter what, but I think it's even more isolating when there's a child with a disability. And so being part of a community, having that acceptance and belonging, starts with our little ones.
So I'm Sasha Begell, and I'm currently the director for Vacaville Unified School District, but the work that I did in my previous district, Fairfield-Sassoon, is really kind of why I'm here and what I want to talk about. So I think if you get nothing else from me today, I'm sure you'll get lots from these ladies, but if you get nothing else from me, my message to you is that you can do this. Because my story, the story in Fairfield-Sassoon, and I can say this now because I'm a director, even though it's going to be recorded, so maybe I'll regret this later, but 7 years ago, when I started as an administrator in special education in Fairfield, I got my first administrative job as a coordinator for special education. And before the interview, I had kind of done the research, and I found out that this coordinator position was going to oversee preschool special ed and elementary. And I'm not kidding you. I went, oh, there's preschool special ed? Yeah, that's a true story. So in 6 years, I literally went from, oh, that's a thing that we do as a school district, to opening a brand new newly remodeled all-inclusive preschool school, as well as doubling a state preschool budget and opening up 6 additional state preschool classrooms. So I just want you to know you can do this. If I can do this, you can do this. So that is the biggest message. But I think then it's how do you do that? You find the right people. You find your nuts and bolts, right? You find your teachers who know what they're doing, know about preschool special education. In my case, that was step 1. Let's figure out what this is all about in preschool. And you start gathering that team and creating that vision, and then you just don't stop talking about it. So, kind of comment that you had a cabinet that was very supportive. We had a superintendent in Fairfield that's still there that was very supportive of early learning. Cabinet, as well. I mean, there was that support there, but a big component of it was that they kept having to hear about it from me and from the others that I had kind of drug along with me, because we just weren't going to stop talking about it until we were able to make some of these moves. So I think, developing your team and figuring out who that is, who can you bring along with you to do the work is critical. Getting out of that silo that we often are in special education 1, but then in preschool it's like double whammy. So start collaborating, start those conversations, invite people in, and be at the table as often as possible to kind of talk about what work it is that you're doing and what work you want to accomplish, and why inclusive opportunities are important for all ages, but particularly in preschool. What better opportunity for our kids to be together, learning together. And then I think the other piece that we were really fortunate, just because we wanted this so badly, we had this vision, plans. Be ready for anything, because in early learning the money streams are very different, and there's grant opportunities and there's different entities that you can partner with. And so I think we had plans A through J. If we get this grant, we'll do this. If we get this much of the grant, we'll do this. If we're able to squeeze this space out, we can do this. And so having those plans ready, so with your team, so that when opportunities arise, right, when a kindergarten classroom gets vacated, that you can jump on that, right? You want those little potties. So can we have that? Here's our plan and our proposal for why we'd like that classroom. And when opportunities come from the state for additional dollars in your state preschools, or if Head Start's looking to partner, that you have plans and are ready for those opportunities, so that you don't miss out on that chance. And I think that's really what enabled us. It was kind of this perfect storm. And so we went in Fairfield Sassoon. When I started as a coordinator overseeing preschool special education, I had 11 special ed, preschool special ed teachers, ECE teachers. And there was this other program, this state preschool, whatever that was, at a couple of our sites as well. And somebody else oversaw that. And so every once in a while, oh, hi there, oh, hello, and that was about it. We didn't really look at how we could collaborate, what we could be doing together. And everybody kept saying, oh, the funding stream is totally different over there. Oh, the rules are completely, you guys, it's not, don't even bother. And we had sort of a reorganization in our district, and I had the opportunity for 1 year. I was the assistant director of English learner and instructional support. And previously, state preschool had been under the supervision of that position. But they said, well, we don't think it's that big of a job, so we'll tell you what. You can keep doing special ed preschool, since you seem to like that now, and the state preschool. They're little, how hard could it be? Go ahead, you do that amongst your many other duties. So I did, and that was kind of where the collision happened of ideas, because it turns out our state preschool, had been kind of looking over the fence too, going, I don't know, maybe we could get in on whatever's happening over there. And so we were able to really start talking about, okay, these barriers exist, but do they really? And how can we, think outside the box and maybe think differently about our programs to be able to join them together? And so really fortunate that I was able to have that 1 year overseeing both programs, so that I could kind of bring the players from both sides. Because again, my expertise wasn't preschool, but I certainly knew how to build teams and provide opportunities for them to instruct me and give me ideas. And so as a team, it really was a team effort, establishing what our plans were moving forward. And so then that first year we kind of piloted sort of by happenstance. Well, what happens if we put some of our kids in here? Well, I don't know, let's try it out. And so, it kind of just snowballed from there, and people got excited. And we were able to then the following year plan and develop, and at the end of the day we opened a preschool. We were able to use an old elementary site that had been closed for about 8 years. We were given permission by the board and the superintendent to remodel, completely outfitted for preschool students. So we were able to solve the space issue. And then at the same time, the state came out with the expansion dollars for state preschool. So we were ready. We jumped on that opportunity. And somebody asked me recently for a copy of our application because they too want to be ready, in case it comes again. So, oh yeah, sure. So I was reading over it and kind of embarrassed to give. I'm like, oh my goodness, I really didn't know what I was doing, but here you go. But it was just the learning process and learning about what is state preschool compared to what is our special education preschool, and how do we marry these two. And then we got involved with Head Start, and we're providing spaces there and staff support there. And so we had this summer of just chaos and moving boxes, and we established the Little Red Wagon Company, because it was myself and a program specialist often carting these moving boxes from Kaplan and Lakeshore from one room to another in a little red wagon that we had borrowed from one of our teachers. But it was pretty crazy. But at the end of the day, we were able to start a school year and take 9 what were formerly SDC classrooms and have them spread out throughout the district into general ed, state preschool operated classrooms, and having our staff in there supporting. And it was just amazing. And so the results that we saw through the year, and that was just last year, and so we're definitely just finished up the building, and they're starting that sustaining and maintaining piece. But it was just the results that we saw in that first year made all of that wagon carting and crazy chaos absolutely worth it for all kids, and as well for the teachers. And I appreciated your comment about, you got better as a teacher every year because you learned from your OT about something you could do for the whole classroom. Well, that's true for our special education teachers, and it's also true for our state preschool or general education teachers, what they're then able to learn that they can provide for all of their students. So I think that was really the beauty in seeing that come together. And it's not easy, and it's not always pretty, but trust me, if I can do this, you all can do this.
Mm-hmm. So a little bit about Pleasanton. Pleasanton is in the East Bay. It's about 15,000 students. We're at about 9.5% special ed, 6% free and reduced lunch, 14% English as an additional language. We do not have state preschools. So that was where we were kind of running it. All the models we kept finding were state preschools and combining it. So we started working with our community preschools and looking at bringing in a for-profit, which is actually not for-profit, district preschool. So we started talking about it. We currently have a center that was dropped 10 years ago. We had some extra dollars, and our assistant director at the time said, well, we really need a preschool. So they put 5 portables down and gave them some land and a fence. And it still looks like that today, but it's actually changed a lot. So it's 5 classrooms. We have 4 non-categorical classes, and then we just moved our intensive learning class over 2 years ago. And so that's been a change. All of our students that are in preschool, that is where they receive speech services. So it is a large center. All of our preschool professionals are there. All of our preschool assessment team is housed there. And it's kind of the one-stop shop for 3 to 5-year-olds in our district. We opened our preschool last March. We had a ribbon cutting that we were very thankful for. Inclusion Collaborative. Kristin came and was there with us, and that was awesome. We have an assistant superintendent that truly believes all means all, and his name's Dr. Odie Douglas. And if you ever get a chance to work with him or meet him, or he's just an amazing individual. And he showed some tenacity, and we went through a series of, we've had 5 superintendents in 5 years. He's been with us for 6 years, and he said, this will happen. This absolutely will happen. So he, along with one of my program specialists, Emily Nags, who's also here today, and we're all wearing orange because it's International Day of Unity, so which is great to open an inclusion conference for that. But these are the shirts that Pleasanton's wearing today. So she's here too. The two of them kept saying, we can do this. Well, we also went through a series of director changes. This is my 4th year as director, but we went through a lot of directors for a little while. And so once I came on, we started building this and talking about it. We first worked on building the PLFs, the Learning Foundation, to Common Core TK and K standards and what that looked like, to make sure that our kindergarten teachers believed that the preschool was something. Because like many people, we have preschool in your district? What do you mean? So we started really saying that kids can learn and they should be learning in these environments. We went to the board and showed our original proposal, and they said, how's that going to work? What does that look like? And so we continued to talk about it. We had a cabinet member say to us at one point, who would want to put their kids in that preschool? So we had some barriers that we had to work through. It took some time, but I'm proud to say we're there. We're full. We have 20 students that are paying. It is the same amount. It's very low cost. We did the recreational licensing, which is every 12 weeks they have to re-license. I believe, Edawanda, you guys do that too, right? So that is a great loophole that we would be happy to explain to you guys. But we mirror our community preschool price, so it's very inexpensive for preschool for us. It's a 3-hour program. They have 2 and 3 day a week. And it is a 50-50 blend. Our intensive class mainstreams back into it. We, at this point in time, we have some students in that classroom that just we're not there yet with their parents, and we're still working towards it, and that is our goal going forward. So we do have 5 teachers. We have 5 ECSEs. We have 4 credentialed state licensed preschool teachers that co-teach with them throughout the day. They also have 2 paraeducators in each class. Some classes might have more based on student need within that room. One of the great partnerships that we have is actually our school's kind of built like an L, and this part is a middle school, this is our preschool center, and this is our elementary school. So in between, in this kind of open area, we have a huge garden. This week, the middle school kids made it look like a pumpkin farm, and so they had little pumpkins out and hay, and the kindergartners and TK, along with our preschool kids, got to go to the pumpkin patch. And they'd been working on their academic vocabulary around that. Our OTs were working on the sensory of the ooh, gushy pumpkins. So it's been a great learning item. But we do really believe in STEM there. So we have, music walls. We bring in people to help them with art. Our OTs work with all of that. And then the middle school comes over. There's actually a class. We have 2 classes there. One class is TAing, and they walk over, and they're teacher's assistants within the program. And then the other class is actually a garden class, and they work one-on-one with kids. So Sasha might be assigned Marla and Kristin, and those become her partners for the semester. So we're actually building community throughout. And then with our elementary school, we do a lot of working with our kindergarten and TK teachers around UDL and teaching kids, and we also use it as a lab for people to come in. We are lucky being in the Bay Area. We have access to San Jose State, Cal State East Bay, St. Mary's, and so we do end up doing a lot of teacher training and letting people come in and see kind of who we are. Again, we have not even been open a year. We are at capacity with where we are right now. Our full intensive goal would be 50-50 blend throughout all 5 classrooms, and we're getting there. I think the areas where we're running into now, I would say, it is with the sustaining part is keeping it going. Right now, our biggest thing is we're bringing in a parent training model because that's been an issue that we just haven't met prior. So we're working with doing preschool parent trainings, not just a special ed. So OTs can train any parent, right? So we have 10 sessions set up for the year, and so the first one's done by OTs, the next one's done by behaviorists, just to help train any parent that needs access to it. It is not only to parents in our district or in our program. So we're excited to open that up to our community at large. And our sign-in sheets have a lot of neighboring communities, and we don't close our doors. We let anybody come to those. We are starting our wait list. We actually had a baby that was a week old put on it, so that was exciting. So it's neat to see, our wait list binder's expanding. We've actually had an explosion of students this year, which is great. We've had 2 parents say, we heard you're the only inclusive preschool around, we're moving to Pleasanton. So that's, that's a feel good, kind of gives you chills. Our preschool, like Clowns, is iPals, small I, capital PALS, and it's Inclusive Play and Learning Center, or skills. So we actually are really excited about where we're going and where we've been. So.
Excellent. So this is a great opportunity to open it up for, or should we do this? Sorry, virtual folks. We're going to go ahead and open it up to questions. So I believe we do have some from our online. And so for anybody in the room, and virtually as well, if you have something specific to one district, then great. If it's just general, then I'll just go ahead and read that out loud. How do you manage parity in pay for ECE versus ECSE salary? This has been a challenge in both building and sustaining. So does anyone want to field
For
that?
us, our gen ed teachers are fully credentialed teachers. So for example, my partner 2 years ago was a 5th grade teacher. So she just had a heart and passion for early childhood. Every year since probably for 8 years, she had requested a transfer to Clouds. And finally there was a spot and it was granted, and she's amazing, amazing.
Oh, sorry.
So the pay is,
Did she need to get a master teacher permit? Or?
no, she's a fully credentialed,
Okay.
so her credential is multi-subject.
But I guess because you're doing this loophole, you don't need to have the
Correct.
child development
Correct.
permits.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
That is a great loophole.
Right.
But I mean, that's also a challenge to have fully credentialed teachers in a program. I mean, it makes us unique, but it's challenging as well for other districts to model that sometimes.
And I think we don't have that same situation. And I think that I caution folks on that loophole. You've got to make sure you've got great teachers, and it sounds like you have one, but that early learning component and those classes that they take for early learning are so critical. And I say that as a former high school teacher. So, that was my background, but I have so much respect for the teachers that are in our state preschools. We're in our state preschools as well as our ECSE, and that early learning and developmental component that they learn in that program is so critical. So unfortunately in Fairfield there was a definite concern, and it was something that we had a lot of discussion about. I'm not sure what they're doing moving forward. Again, I'm in a different district now, but it was a concern, and it was, we just kind of had to be open and honest about it and own it, that was going to be something that was going to, come up for folks. So our model was really a state preschool teacher who had the permit, the appropriate permit for the class, and then they had a special education teacher, the ECSE teacher, sort of tied to that program, and kind of a co-teaching model. And we did a lot of training about co-teaching and the different types of co-teaching that you might do. And we really wanted to encourage teams to come up with systems that worked for themselves, for their pair in their classroom. But it was definitely, there were, some stepping on toes a little bit, and that concern of we're coming into your classroom. And what was interesting was our ECSE teachers, there were some comments that were, I've had my own classroom for years and now I'm just a support in here. And yet, the permit teachers are thinking, yeah, and I'm doing all the work. And have you seen my paycheck? So it is definitely a concern. I do know that in some districts they have them on a similar scale, or they have additional requirements so that pay scale is similar. And just because we inherited a system of division, we weren't there yet in Fairfield. But I do know that in some districts, but then that's a cost analysis, right, that you have to do. And so then that becomes an issue as well. So yeah, it's definitely an issue.
I actually think that's a great question. We did a lot of onboarding with CSEA, our union. We talked a lot about the benefits and what it would look like, adding jobs, and how we could support people. Our ECE teachers, so our ECSEs are the credentialed through California Commission of Teacher Credentialing, but our ECE teachers go to all the trainings with ECSE, and so they get access to that education. They are not paid the same as a teacher. They do not have the 4-year degree plus the credential. But we do incentivize things for them to be on that team. But a lot of it is also just working larger with the union and talking about what that's going to look like, and adding the jobs, and how we can really move along together. And I think it's a really imperative part of this job is we talked about working with cabinets and teachers. It's also working with our CSEA unions to make sure that they understand the reasons, the why, because oftentimes the why is what speaks to people too.
you. So another virtual question here. Can you speak to the systems you have in place that support transition from your preschool program into kindergarten and the elementary school setting, and whether or not those programs or sites are at the primary grades also embrace inclusion? So kind of a transition, what does that look like as they matriculate through the grades?
You can speak to that.
I can start and just say that was one of our biggest reasons for wanting to have access to these general ed classrooms, larger classroom sizes for our students who were receiving special education in preschool, because our preschool teachers would go to these kinder transitions and they had a pretty good system set up. The receiving site would come, everybody would be there at the table, and they would have lovely assessment data and information to share all about how Johnny could do in a class with 9 kids and 3 adults. And so then the kindergartner teachers are sitting there, starting to sweat and thinking, okay, that's lovely, but I have, 25 kids and there isn't another adult, so how is that going to look? And so that was a question that we just couldn't answer in our old model. Time after time they would get that question, they just couldn't answer it. And so that was one of the things I think we were most excited about, was going to these kindergarten transitions. Our sites are spread out across different elementary schools, and so oftentimes, some of the elementary schools had at least some working knowledge of what was happening in the preschool, but a lot of times they were students who were going to different elementary schools within the district. And so we have a learning center model in the elementary schools as well in Fairfield-Sassoon. That had happened, that was my first project. I felt a little more comfortable with elementary school than I did with preschool. So we had moved away from SDC and RSP to a learning center model. So that was already an expectation at the elementary school. So it made those transitions a lot smoother coming up from preschool, where we then also called it the learning center model. But kids, we found out, students in preschool were able to access general ed for almost the entire day. Most of our students, they didn't need any time being, pulled out for some skill work. But so that, I think, transition was a lot smoother because the work had already been done at the elementary level to expect this type of system and program. So that was helpful to us, and I know our teachers were really excited to be able to share data about what a student could do in a classroom of 20 or 22 or 24. So.
Thank you. Next question, do the paraeducators in the state preschool inclusion programs need to have ECE units? Do they receive specific training?
Paraeducators?
This was for state preschool.
That's you.
Yeah.
So there are components in licensing as well as the state preschool regulations, and we kind of I had to do a lot of learning, but my team had to do a lot of learning about which one applies, and so then how does that work? And so there are essentially rules about supervision and who's allowed to supervise how many kids and what they have to supervise that, and then what does supervision mean? Does that mean leaving the classroom? What about if the restrooms are in the classroom? What about if the teacher's in the classroom? So I don't want to give you a yes/no answer, because the answer really is it depends. It's going to depend on your number of students, what credentials, certificates, permits your teachers and the other adults in the classroom have. But the best way, I think, to find that out is to go through licensing and looking through the state preschool piece to find out where you are as far as what your staff have and what they might need to get. But we did, because we wanted to make sure that our folks were able to do supervision. We actually had to work with our union and created new job descriptions for preschool paraeducators specifically that then required those ECE units. And then we were able to bump them up on the pay scale. So that was kind of a nice piece that we were able to work out with our classified union to be able to say, okay, well, we want to create this position. We want to require the units, and to do so, they'll be compensated for that additional education. So I would recommend that route.
Do you have a screening process for gen ed students? Sam, do you want to
Absolutely not. No, we don't.
And no meaning in terms of no to get in, but then maybe this question is also once they're in. So I think maybe a two-part question.
Okay. Right. So the initial enrollment piece, no. All means all, right? So
Lots of chocolates.
Really, truly, the only requirements that we have are they have to be 3 and toilet trained. So those are our requirements
For gen ed.
for general ed students who want to enroll as a general ed student. So no, we don't. It's a registration process, a form, and we are on a lottery basis because of the interest. I know that Marla mentioned we had the same question. We had the same question from our cabinet when we were first starting. How are you going to get students? How are you going to get typically developing students in your classrooms? We said, just wait. Just let us show you. And at first we were word of mouth for our registration. We were starting, like I said, one class, a few spots, and we started hearing the word spread. And on registration morning, we were there at 4 in the morning in the dark, and there were parents with lawn chairs, including our superintendent, sitting in his lawn chair, and my husband sitting in his lawn chair, waiting for those spots. And we always have a waiting list, up to, at times, 100 and on the waiting list. And so we are on a lottery system, and we pull names, but they're always full. And then the second part, as far as screening, once they're in, of course, we always reference our classrooms as our students who are identified and those that are not identified yet, because we know that a lot of our students coming in may have needs as well. So we're implementing a student study, an SST process at this level, where that's another piece that we have work to do on that. But if we suspect a disability, then we assess and determine whether they require an IEP.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, I understand that there's a state preschool and there's a for-profit, but I wasn't clear about what your kind of combination is.
Yeah, we don't have state preschool within our district.
Right. So it's just a program that you started with general ed teachers and special.
Correct.
And for our virtual folks, I'm just going to clarify, there was a question about what type of program Etiwanda runs versus state preschool or Head Start. That's the Etiwanda is district program.
Is Etiwanda school district, is it fee-based?
Yeah. For the gen ed students.
For gen ed?
For gen ed students, yes. They pay a daily. We have a daily fee. We started off at $10 a day, and now we're at we went to $15, and now we're at $20 a day for our general ed students.
And they attend either 2 days or 3 days a week.
Something, can I?
Yes.
I'm curious for Etiwanda. Something that we're struggling with are our families that cannot afford that. Do you have any like scholarships, or is it based on families? Or have you guys been able to figure that out? That is something that we struggle with still in Pleasanton.
No, we don't.
Okay.
We don't have scholarships.
We'll figure
or
it out
subsidized
together.
Yet. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
And back in the day, we worked with a consultant from SEEDS, supporting early educational delivery systems, which is now SEEDS, a partnership. It's kind of morphed a little bit. But she helped us, Jan Kern helped us look at what the local preschools were charging, including, just anything within our boundaries. And so that's what it was based off of, initially. And I believe the first recommendation was anywhere between 8 and 20, and that was 12 years ago. So went with 10, and then now that it's at that 20 after 12 years. Yeah, so no sliding scale or anything.
Okay.
And something that we had kind of talked about, and I don't know that there are necessarily plans yet. One of the other funding streams we have, and this probably won't help Pleasanton, but was Title I. And so being able to utilize those dollars, and then eventually where we had wanted to go was even looking at LCAP, Title I, hoping to get some interest from our local First Five, and being able to do kind of a tiered system, because we also wanted to go to a fee base, but then having sort of a kind of a different options, like a sliding scale based on these other funding streams that could come in and support, depending on what eligibilities a student was for. So that is another opportunity to look at. I know some other districts are utilizing a number of different funding streams in that way, and do like a partial scholarship or a half scholarship from some of these other sources. So that's something to look into, depending on what demographic and what sources you have in your district.
Thank you. Next question. What curriculum is used? What professionals are part of the assessment team on the site now? So curriculum and assessment team piece.
So I'll start with curriculum. Pleasanton did a huge ELA, ELD adoption last year, and math the year prior. This year, our curriculum team under Ed Services, so our directors of curriculum, are actually working with our preschool teachers. So in our district, we are absolutely not a silo under Dr. Odie Douglas. So his full belief is curriculum supports kids 3 to 22 in our district. So they are actually coming out. They're piloting curriculum right now. They have 4 that they've chosen from that should be coming out, I believe, this week. One of them is Benchmark, which is one of the curriculums that we adopted, K-5. So they're really trying to figure out how to support that curriculum component. And the PD is, again, our belief is that our ECE teachers and our ECSE teachers attend all curriculum together. We pay for them to be there. Our CSEA current contract does not have them there on teacher work days. We supplement that and do pay for them to be there. And then our paraeducators, we pay supplemental hours so that they're aware of what curriculums we're bringing in and what our expectations are going forward.
So in Fairfield, it's a similar, we utilize the Handwriting Without Tears Get Set for School preschool curriculum and kind of modify that depending on the class and the needs. So that's sort of the curriculum piece. But also as far as the professional development, we actually built days into the calendar since our ECSE teachers were used to teaching on the elementary school calendar, but there is no required amount of days for instruction for preschoolers except for what your state preschool contract allows. So we actually took off a couple of days on our state preschool contract so that we would have built-in days, additional teacher work days for our credentialed teachers, and then we paid, same thing, our permit teachers to stay as well as our paraprofessionals to stay. So that way we were able to build in, I think it was 5 additional professional development days where we had all preschool, all teachers, service providers, paraeducators together in the same room. And then we're able to do breakout sessions from there based on what we wanted to accomplish with the professional development. But that was very helpful as well, especially in that first year, kind of getting everybody together and having those conversations together about how things are going and what do we still need. So that was something that we were very intentional about.
All right.
I know we have a lot of questions.
No, go ahead.
So we use in Etowanda the World of Wonders curriculum for language arts and math, and that's new to us, so we are still exploring that and trying to find the best use of that. But we always go back to the learning foundations, creative curriculum, and the DRDP. That's what our basis is. So anything else, a curriculum that is purchased, is just supplemental.
Thank you. How have you seen your preschool inclusion programs impact services in kindergarten? So that kind of goes back to that transition piece a little bit we talked about, but I think I would view this almost as, have you seen a change in either mindset or services and supports that are available in kinder, knowing that your kids are coming?
I'll just go back to what I said previously, and I think just the confidence that the preschool teachers had at the transition meetings to share with the kindergarten team that would be receiving the student, I think resulted in, we weren't overestimating how many minutes of service a student might need, and it was a much more realistic vision of what would be needed in kindergarten versus this preschool setting that was a lot more similar than it had been previously. But we also found and exited a number of students during their preschool year because it turns out that 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds do some pretty funny stuff, and maybe this child is actually more typical than we thought. And just having that exposure and having all kids in the room together, I think it really helped our teachers to see we maybe were holding our expectations almost higher for our kids who were receiving special education services than we were if the student was a typically developing student in a typical classroom. And so we also had a really high exit rate last year, which is great, right? That's early intervention. That's what we want to see. And so I think that was something that sort of surprised all of us, but pleasantly surprised us.
I'm not finding as much of an impact as I would like. I think that, you and I, way back when, our hope was to start here and to slowly infiltrate into our old grades, and I still there's a disconnect still. Kindergarten, same, but we're not the same. You guys have so much support. It's different than our class, like you guys were mentioning earlier. One benefit, though, that I think what I find is that we have introduced families to a standard for special education for their students, and they are advocating for their kids, wanting to continue, and I appreciate that. So, our teachers can expect to hear it from me, and the soapbox and here's Sam again, but when they hear it from families, and our families now have that high expectation, I think that's important.
Yeah, it's kind of that big question of if not now, when? Mm-hmm. Right? Are we going to wait? That whole readiness model thing, are we really going to wait and see if just one more year? I truly think that the readiness model is for the adults. Right?
Always.
Are we ready?
Always.
Do we have the programs? Do we have the support? It's not the kids. The kids are ready. Kids are like, send me to school. I've got my backpack. I had it in July for the next year, So thank you for that. And I'm watching our time, and I know our virtual folks, so we'll have a few more questions before we release you guys. Let's see. The cost analysis was mentioned. Are your programs cost effective? So I think that's different for kind of each of the districts.
I kind of chuckle because special ed's not cost effective.
Right, right.
But early intervention hopefully is. So the way that we actually did our budget is all of our ECE teachers, 50% of their salary comes from special ed, 50% of their salary comes from tuition. And based on that, we did that because the legal requirement is to have a gen ed teacher at every IEP. The legal requirement is to, have students have access to gen ed. So we're able to justify that through our spending models. But that is how we did it. We are breaking even based on that right now. And we didn't do it for profit. I mean, we say it's a for-profit just because it is a fee-based program. So we are transparent about that, but we are not making money. But we are seeing kids smile, which is priceless. So.
And I would say for Fairfield Sassoon, as far as we spent some money on the space component, right, getting appropriate space ready, and that was committed, the board committed to spend those one-time dollars on that. But as far as the ongoing staffing, I would say cost neutral in the sense that, we already had the special education teachers and the special education funded paras. They already existed, and so by being able to access the state preschool dollars, which are reimbursable, it's a grant. Essentially, you get your attendance, you get your money, and so by expanding that, and then you have to show a match is kind of how the funding works. And so we've got the match. We're sitting over here in their SDC rooms this whole time, but now we're able to have them participating in these gen ed classrooms and supporting those classrooms. So we really didn't spend any more money on the special ed side, and if anything, I think the additional dollars that we received from participating in state preschool, but then also in the QRIS that was kind of gaining momentum at the same time in our county, and some other areas where we were able to pull some revenue. We actually had a little bit more funding to be able to get the professional development, pay people to attend the professional development, and some of those pieces. So I think that cost neutral at worst as far as our staffing concerns, but at best I think we were able to have a little bit more flexibility with our dollars. So.
Any more? Are you guys good? Mm-hmm. So last question, the other ones were kind of around funding too, so I'm going to take this last one if that's okay, because that'll give us about a minute and a half to release our virtual folks. As you identify students who need to be placed on an IEP, how do you adjust your numbers to keep the 50-50 ratio?
Yep.
That's a fun one.
We are always growing. We usually start off, and we always say by October we're going to need to add another classroom. So we are doing a lot of evaluations, and so we pull kids off of the waiting list for our gen ed spots. So we always keep the 50-50 ratio.
And we just build program assuming that we will identify students as we go. So we don't have a 50-50 model. We have it's typically around 12 gen ed spots and 8 special education, and we figure that we're going to grow. And so the way that we have the funding, just like you would when you're running your preschool, kids turn 3 all year long, so we leave spaces. We don't start with those 8 special education spots full. We grow as the year goes on, and then if kids are identified that we're in a general ed spot, that's not a problem either.
I'm looking at our time. We have 20 seconds according to our clock up there. So I just want to wrap up and just thank our panelists so much for all the work that you're doing, not just being here today and sharing your information, but what you're doing every day for kids is amazing. So thank you so much. And thank you to our virtual folks and our in-person folks. Have a great rest of the conference.